Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Southern Comfort Podcast. We're your boys of the Maroon Bison. I'm Big Rich,
Kevin Harris.
and we're glad that you guys are able to join us this week. Once, I want to thank everybody for tuning in, subscribing, listening to our show. We really thank you. But we really need you guys to help us reach 1,000 subscribers, whether it's on, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even on our YouTube channel. We want to get our numbers up. We want to help spread the word. Kevin and I, we take time out of our schedule to bring you guys this podcast as just a culmination of our careers on the road, traveling across this country, on different campaigns, working with different elected officials. And we're really just glad to kind of join you all today. Kevin, you got something you want to add to the plea?
No, other than, well, definitely please subscribe. And I also just want to say too, like we look at the data and stuff and just like where people are tuning in from, it's all over the place. I think we have people in South Africa. We have some folks in London. And most of these people for sure are people that Richard and I have never met because the overall views and downloads and stuff like that is like several dozens of thousands. I think I don't think we've done over 100,000 yet, but we're zeroing in on it. And at this point, what we've done over 30 episodes without missing a week. So I love it, and I thank y'all for listening. And I get text messages and stuff too from people. So I know that there are people out there who actually are listening every week. So it's really cool.
Yeah, yeah. So again, guys, like, subscribe, tell your friends, and we're happy to leave comments too on our YouTube page, please.
Hmm.
It's at Maroon Bison, same with the Instagram channel. And we hope, hopefully we will continue to bring you guys some insightful stuff. If you want us to talk about anything, a certain topic or something, just let us know.
Hmm.
Um,
And disagree. We like to fight. So disagree. We love to argue.
so a
Tell us
buddy,
we're wrong.
a buddy of mine was telling me that we need to argue like on ESPN. I was like, no, if we agree, we agree. If we don't, we don't, right? But this is not, I am not Stephen A. Smith, right? Like, I know when to let my hairline just fade away.
I know, and I don't remember even like all the races and stuff that we've done, and and that collaboration is still active. I can't remember a strategic thing that we kind of like disagreed on and had to hash out. I think we're usually pretty much in
Yeah.
lockstep on most things. Yeah, man, even sports, cities. Yeah, so no.
No, you
But
like,
I
you
don't
like,
know.
you like Baltimore.
I love Baltimore
Yeah.
City. That's where I spent my time. That was one of my most favorite jobs ever in politics. Was working in Baltimore City and still being very much involved in the city and its politics. So I love it. Baltimore will always be one of my homes.
Yeah. It's not high up on my list. It's,
Yeah.
it's, it's on the list, but it ain't, ain't up there.
Why? How much time have you spent there? You
Um,
sound like Trump.
no, I like my steak a little bloody. um, I think I did like 3 months there.
Mhm.
And then, of course, with Ben's race, we were in and out quite a
Mm.
bit.
Mhm.
But I spent 3 months, you know,
Mhm.
April, May, and some of June, March, April, and
Mhm.
May
Mhm.
in Baltimore. It was cool. It was all right.
I love it. I always have. And when I was living there, we were coming out of we had been in DC. And what I love so much about it is just like the just lack of pretentiousness that's there, because that can just get overwhelming with DC and its culture. And in DC, somebody says, what school did you go to? They mean college or graduate school. In Baltimore, they mean high
High
school.
school.
And I love just being able to slip into a bar or an establishment or something, and just hang out, and it would never come up what you did.
Yeah.
Whereas in DC, people decide whether or not they can be friends with you or not based on what do you do and what you can do for them. And Baltimore is just a real place with real people. And, part of the job I had when I was in the mayor's office, I oversaw community engagement and constituent services, and you really meet the community and the people and just helping people. And it's a proud city. It's a great city. It's a fun city. I love going to Ravens games, watching the Orioles. I could do everything except crab cakes because I have a shellfish allergy. And so the mayor and everybody used to call me a little weak ass. And I'm like, you're literally making fun of what do you want me to do? You want me to to just fall out? But they used to call me a weak ass and stuff because I couldn't have the crabs. But I love that city, and we'll be there shortly.
So you
Going up for another visit.
so you want the crabs? Is what you're saying?
It's such a part of the city and its culture. It would have been nice, like all this Maryland work and all this time, like living in Maryland, to never have really had a Maryland crab cake. It's kind of goofy, but that's my reality.
All right, you guys heard it. Kevin wants crabs. So, um, a few episodes back, we were kind of giving people free game to sort of behind the curtain of campaigns. I think it was
Mhm.
episode was called "Free Game: The Campaign Economic Guide."
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
I told the listeners that we were going to pick back up on the next stage of that conversation. I think this is an appropriate time to kind of to go into that and talk about what it looks like truly building out your team,
Mhm.
and sort of, once you build out the team or starting to build out your team, and
Mhm.
identifying the first two main key positions were a fundraising director and a campaign manager.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the campaign manager is the person pretty much driving the ship, the day-to-day operations, but your fundraising director is the person who's helping you raise that money so that these next two departments that we're talking about, which is the communications department and the field operations, uh they're gonna spend that money, baby.
Mhm.
That's
Mhm.
that's 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 you and I. We're going to spend, 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 and
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
want you
Mhm.
to raise some more.
Mhm.
Um, and like I always say, this is a teaching podcast, and so we're going to give you the consultant level knowledge that campaigns usually pay big money for. So if you missed out on the free game episode, the economics guide, please go back and listen, and then come into this episode and just hear what we have to say.
Mhm. Mhm.
So Kev, I think we should start, in your department with which is communications, right?
Mhm.
And that is developing pretty much the message.
Mhm.
Um, the communications field are really like the workhorses that actually get your message out to the
Mhm.
voters, right? You
Mhm.
guys design and develop and create whatever the message is going to be.
Mhm.
And the field team goes out there and amplifies that to the voters to have them understand it.
Mhm.
They're running the events, they're doing voter outreach events, they're doing canvassings, phone banks, you name it,
Mhm.
the rallies, even putting out yard signs as a part of the field game, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And so when we talk about breaking down the communications department, it is basically the campaign's voice to the world, or the candidate's voice to the world.
Mhm. Mhm. That's right. It's like I always like to tell people, message drives politics, right? And that's why that message is so important, because it touches every part of the campaign. It's what you're communicating to donors, right? Who are going to give you the money to fund the campaign. It's what you're communicating to volunteers about why they should show up and work on your behalf to get you elected. And it's what you ultimately communicate to the people who are going to have to decide who they want to vote for. And in the course of a campaign, you can never personally reach all of the people that are going to be showing up to vote. But you need these people to have some information about you to be able to make their decisions. And so messaging, it really comes down to not just having the right things to say and knowing the right things to say, but there's also that strategy of how did you leverage the campaign's budget to make sure that you are reaching enough people to be able to ultimately win the election. And there are some campaigns that had more money and lost because the message was not great or not the right message. And then there are other campaigns that were poor on cash but rich on message, and they got some upsets. And so the message is important, and that's why oftentimes in campaigns, right, that's where the bulk of your budget is going to go, the actual communicating out, whether that be to donors, volunteers, but most importantly, or rather, I shouldn't say most importantly, but most consequentially, are the people that are going to be showing up to vote. So it's important because this is going to be the biggest part of your budget.
Yeah. And so when we talk about that, let's talk with the structure. You have your
Hmm.
communications director, who is basically the strategic brain.
Hmm.
They're developing the overall messaging, managing the brand, and coordinating, all voter contact, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and then under that, you have your press secretary, and that's
Hmm.
like your day to day media person. They're the ones handling reporters, relationships, trying to book interviews, putting out statements, press releases, things of that nature.
Hmm. Hmm.
Or that could also be your spokesperson.
Hmm.
But what people don't realize that separate from that, there's still, and this is probably started during the Obama era, you have your digital director and your creative director, and those are
Hmm.
people mainly working on social media advertising, email campaigns, that language that goes out. So when you're getting the 50,000 emails, they're the ones coordinating and helping develop those.
Hmm.
And then your creative director, it's not all campaigns will have this. Sometimes it's generally a consultant. Those are the ones doing like graphic designs and stuff that's going popped up on social media.
Hmm.
They're working with the video production, or advertising and creative. And so that is a split role. So usually that is a media consultant as well that
Hmm.
helps deliver that. And we talked about some of that on the last episode with Jake and even with Jake's wife Maria in their
Hmm.
episodes.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, but I think the other part that people don't understand with the communication is, and I think this deserves a whole private episode in itself, um, which is polling.
Hmm. Hmm.
Polling is one thing where you get your poster, who is also a part of that team, and
Hmm.
they're the ones that help develop what that message is based
Hmm.
off. And and this is a special shout out to Terrence Woodbury. I'm gonna clip this part and put it out there so the world will know we coming for you for the polling episode. Terrence
Yes.
Woodbury of Hit
Yes.
Strategies.
Hmm.
you know. But just a quick brief, and I know we mentioned in several other episodes, but why is that poster important?
So the pollster is important because the pollster is the person who really determines where the voters are, right? Helps you to understand what's really on people's minds, what's really important to them, helps you to understand what they like about your candidate, what they don't like about your candidate, what they what your vulnerabilities are, and they also help you identify what your opportunities are to win. And all of that is based on there's a big part of the reason why I could never build posters because I can't do math. So they they use a lot of smart mathematical, political sciencey approaches to really be able to give you good data and good numbers to really understand all the things you need to understand to be able to put together your strategy to win. And they're important because you're going to make decisions on how you spend a lot of your campaign budget. The majority of your campaign budget is going to be based on the numbers and the data that they give you. And so you got to be really, really good. And the thing that people will have hear Terrence on the show here soon, but the thing that makes people like Terrence so impressive is that sometimes the data can tell you conflicting things. There's some things that the data can't answer for you, right? But you're still looking to that pollster, right, to be an authoritative voice on, well, what should we do? And so you're paying for that experience to know that, right? But then also, keep in mind with data, right? You can data will tell you the answer. Data will only tell you the answer to the questions that you ask. So how do you know that you're asking the right questions, right? And so that pollster, when you are a person, like me on the communication side now, and you're responsible for kind of pulling all of this together to figure out, well, what is the message? That pollster is like your right hand. And I can't really develop a mess. Well, I can develop a message without it, but the preference is that, you have that pollster and that data. And coincidentally, Terrence and I we have a couple projects that we're working on together now. And one of them, I'm having to go through this process with that candidate of pulling together the message. And I'm like, well, when do we get our polling back from Terrence? Because I need to know what's in those numbers and what's in that data. So that's the importance of the pollster, but all of that really goes into voter contact and communications, and all of that is why it ends up being your biggest line item in any campaign.
Right. And everything starts with the campaign's core message, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're not talking about like a 12-point policy paper. You
Mm-mm.
know, you got to keep it simple, stupid, right? KISS,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And it should be a clear reason why voters should vote for you or want to choose you for whatever office you're running for.
Mm-hmm.
Think about it. In 2008 with Obama, it was change we can
It
believe in.
was it was no change we can believe in was in 12.
Was it
I
12?
think
Yes,
that
we
was the
can.
re-election. Yes, we can was '08. And then, man, we had these signs in Iowa that I hated at the time. They just said hope. And
Mm,
I was just like, this is so stupid. We're going to get our asses kicked. They don't think this guy has enough experience to even do the job. And we're out here talking about hope,
hope, baby, hope.
and I'm like, the signs barely even have his name on it. And I remember David Axelrod, who was the campaign's chief strategist. So he was ultimately in charge of all of the communications, and he was and still is like one of my political idols, right? So like Obama would come, to town, and people want to go see Obama. I'm looking for David Axelrod. I just want to hang out with David Axelrod. And so, so he's responsible for doing all the stuff we were just talking about for the Obama campaign. And I remember like talking to him because he was just saying, well, how's it going like on the ground? And I'd said, look, man, I just told him, I was like, look, man, I like, number one, I hate the signs. I think people want to see a little bit more. I think we're kind of missing the mark. And he said, I hear you and I understand. He said, but keep in mind, I got access to a lot more data than you do. And he told me too, he said, understand this. He said, as you continue to go throughout your career, um, you're going to see that a lot of times you start out with certain assumptions and certain thoughts and your opinion on things. He said, and then you get the data back in the numbers, right? And your job as a strategist is you got to drive us toward the data and the numbers, even if you personally may not think that you even like that. That's not even your opinion. And you can't let your opinion sort of cloud the advice and the counsel that you give. So I don't know. For all I know, David Axelrod might have hated the signs too, but then he got some polling and some data back and was like, actually, this is where the voters are. This is the way we need to go. Um, but yeah, man, but it ended up being exactly right. In that Clinton Obama race is a good example of, right, the power of messaging. um, we did a better job of being where the voters were and communicating that. In retrospect, it looks like Hillary, even though she was this well credentialed, qualified, certainly capable to be president, in 2008, she was talking to voters about the wrong thing, though. They didn't care. They didn't want to hear about experience.
right,
They
right,
wanted to hear about change, and he was a change person. And that's what the job is of your chief strategist, right? To understand where's really going on with the electorate amongst the people. How do we position the candidate, and how do we message that our candidate is the best person to meet where the voters are? And that's
right,
ultimately what took Obama to victory, right? Like he had a superior message.
right. And even, so Obama had a couple change,
Mm-hmm.
hope, yes we can.
Mm-hmm.
Trump, everybody knows Trump, make America great again, right?
And you got to give him that,
You right.
regardless of what you think about his politics, the dude is a branding and messaging genius. He is. I mean, you usually don't associate him with the word genius, Well, he does,
He
but stable
he's
genius.
really smart. No, he's
He's
really, really smart.
he's really, really
Really,
smart.
really, really smart.
But everybody got to give him credit for that, right? And
Mhm.
even in like this last election, right? Like, I mean, we're really all of it. His whole existence. Nobody else would do the things that he does, you know. But
Yeah,
he's won.
yeah,
He's
yeah.
won with coattails. You know
Right,
what I mean? So
right.
he clearly understands something about the electorate and the people that a lot of folks don't get. And a lot of that is messaging and communicating. You might not like what he likes to say. It might not be for you, but
You
he
know,
gets out a compelling message.
and you know, they tend to break voters down in several categories, but
Mhm.
there's educated and non-educated, and his message works for both, right?
It
Like,
does.
right,
It does, and that's what it is. People think that the people electing Trump are like backwoods bubbas and stuff. No, no, no. He does quite well with college educated people. Like, it's not just, your country cousin that, didn't go off to school, doesn't know any better, and these are the people propelling Trump to victory. No, no. There are people with degrees
right, right.
who are like MAGA.
So another component to messaging is you have your core message, which is the main reason why you're running. That should be, no more than 30 seconds max. You have your elevator pitch, which is like a full introduction um, with your background. That should be no more than 2 minutes. I mean, even less
Mhm.
than that, right?
Mhm.
It's the reason
Mhm.
why it's an elevator pitch. You're supposed to be able to tell it to someone while you're riding in the elevator,
In
and
an
that's it,
elevator. Yep.
right?
In the same amount of time.
Same
Yep.
amount of time.
Mhm.
Then there's your stump speech, which is if you're going to any one big rally or sorts, it's their standard campaign speech. You'll hear it over and over and over and over and over again.
Mhm. Mhm.
Is
Mhm.
what they ask to change the memory, depending on where they are or the crowd. They may change or interject different policy points in there, but the stump speech is usually the same, and that's longer. It's usually 20, 30 minutes.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then, there's always policy messages, which is, issue specific talking points. And
Mhm.
those are the things that they interchange throughout, whether they're doing a big rally or campaign speech, or if they're doing like a small retail stop and it's geared towards a specific policy, that's what they talk about.
Yeah.
But I think the other thing that I want you to, highlight on is the importance of discipline of consistency,
Right.
right? Why
Right.
is it important to always stick and say the same things over and over?
Well, the average person has to hear something 13 times before it really registers with them and before they can repeat it back to you, right? And oftentimes on the campaigns, like the candidates get tired of saying the same thing. Why do I keep having to say the same thing over and over and over again? And they want to change their speeches and they want to change their messages and everything like that. But it really doesn't work when you do that. You have to have message consistency. You have to have message discipline. And then everything that you just described, the stump speech, the policy announcement, it all has to go back to core themes. And you have to consistently do that and build that out over a period of time if you want it to really resonate and work with voters. And I always apply what I call the Maya Angelou rule, which is, goes back to when she said people will forget what you said, but they won't forget how you made them feel, right? That is what you're really trying to drive and convey with your message. Who are you? So the thing you talk about the most on the campaign is your bio. People got to know who you are. They got to know your values. They got to first just decide if they even like you before they'll listen to your healthcare plan. And so a lot of candidates will get into these races and they'll say, no, I need to go give a big speech. I need to announce my economic development plan. And you guys just want me to talk about where I was born. Well, yeah, because they're not going to listen to your economic plan. They got to know who you are.
Right.
It's sort of like, dating, right? You don't propose on the first night. Like, hey, can I get to know you? And so campaigns are the same way. So you spend the bulk of your time just really introducing yourself to voters and talking about yourself. And like we were just talking about Obama as an example, Obama spent 2 years. There was never a time where he said anything where he didn't remind you that he was a community organizer. right, that he organized on the south side of Chicago. It's like, well, I've been saying that for 2 years. You think people will know that? No, believe it or not, 2 years later, people were still like, "He's from Chicago?" And he's literally, and actually, he's not even from Chicago, but people,
Wait,
were
wait,
still
clarify. He was born in America.
he was born in America, but but people still he was still reiterating that part of his bio, and then you saw that in the ads, and you saw it in the mail, and you see how everything is just
So
echoing those core themes.
so to that point, right? Again, the ads, the mailers, the speeches, social media, your website, it should
Mhm.
all reinforce the same
The same
core
thing.
thing, right? Voters
That's
need
right.
to hear the same thing multiple ways,
Mhm.
right? Like you said,
Mhm.
13 times.
Mhm.
And so like the checkpoints, even down to all the materials, the t-shirts, the yard signs, the rally posters,
Mhm.
your
Mhm.
core message appears in every piece of voter contact, right?
Mhm.
Like, the same color scheme, the same fonts, the same logo treatment,
Mhm.
right? Candidates use that same key phrase over and over again in all their speeches, in all their interviews,
Mhm.
but the staff is also trained to stay on message as well, right?
That's right.
That's
That's
very,
right.
very important.
And a good non-political example that people really get with everything that you're saying, that's a big, popular, important brand in the South, Chick-fil-A.
Mm,
Every Chick-fil-A experience is the same.
mhm,
It doesn't matter where you go,
mm.
doesn't matter what you get off the menu, your experience is the same, right? It's the same, right? And that's kind of what you want it to be with your message on the campaign, right? Whether they go to the website, whether they get mail, however you reach them, whether they have a conversation with your staff, one of your field staff, or a conversation with you, the candidate, or they watched you in a debate, you almost wanted to be like Chick-fil-A in the sense that it doesn't matter where I see this guy or this woman, or how I hear about their campaign, it's the same experience, right? I'm getting the same message. And then what I often tell people too is that sometimes that disconnect can be fatal, right? And one of the biggest examples of that for me was when you look at like Mike Bloomberg's campaign, right? Like Mike Bloomberg had really great ads and a whole lot of money to put behind them. And for a minute, in 2020 was surging, right? Like it's like this dude might end up getting the nomination. And then what happened? He went into a debate, he did horribly. And what people saw on TV in the debate did not match what they were seeing in those great ads.
Right.
And then what happened? His numbers went down.
And again, debating is a part of the communications department as well, right?
That's right.
I finally was afforded the opportunity to actually participate in some real debate prep for,
Mm-hmm.
U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren doing her
Mm-hmm.
presidential bid.
Mm-hmm.
And people, again, everything is, if it's planned out properly, you need to know and you need to have proper debate prep,
That's
right?
right.
And that takes a team to build it out, right? That,
Mm-hmm.
working the scripts of your opponents and knowing what your opponents are going to say and knowing how your candidate should, rebuttal or offer
Mm-hmm.
an opinion there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Knowing how to set up the
Mm-hmm.
debate stage, knowing the
Mm-hmm.
rules of the debate, right? All of that
Mm-hmm.
takes prep. And that's again, it takes a team to build that out. And so
That's right.
when we talk about that, the other aspect is there's paid media, which
Yes.
which costs money, and paid media is the TV ads that you see, it's the
Mm-hmm.
commercials, it's
Mm-hmm.
the stuff on the radio, and then there's earned media, which is free,
Mm-hmm.
which you are in favor of, and if you know how to work it, it works for you, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Earned
Mm-hmm.
media is getting again that same core message out, but at no cost to you or the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's what you
Mm-hmm.
want. You want more earned media hits than you do. And you get those through policy announcements or press releases,
Mm-hmm.
community events that you invite the press out to.
Mm-hmm.
We push candidates to write op-eds. There's an
Mm-hmm.
op-ed strategy,
Mm-hmm.
which is getting out to your local paper. Um,
Mm-hmm.
breaking news when they're tweeting out, putting stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
If it's some
Mm-hmm.
serious stuff, they'll always go and say, well, candidate for, Secretary of State said this about voting rights.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and even, Jake talked about on the last episode, opposition research, right?
Yes.
Knowing
Yes.
your opponent's stumbles and where they, or what they may say and ready to
Mhm.
pounce on anything based on something from their past.
Mhm. Mhm.
And all of that, plays into a lot of the earned media tactics.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything?
The other aspect of it is is owned media. So that's when, it's not the press, but it's what you post on IG or TikTok or Facebook, your campaign's own social media, because you own those channels. So you're in control of the message that you put there and distribute out to people. And so owned media is important as well, right? That's another vehicle to reach and talk to people. And then there's what they're reading and seeing on the news, right? That's your earned media. And then your paid media is like your mail and your TV ads. But you should be saying the same thing across all of it.
Yeah. Before we get into talking about getting your ground game
Mm-hmm.
army running and going, I think the other thing is crisis communication, right?
Mm-hmm.
Every campaign is going to face a crisis. It's not a matter of
mm-hmm.
if, it's a when, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
you better have the communication teams better be on their job and have a plan for if and when something's going to happen. And speed
Mm-hmm.
matters in a crisis or response. And so,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
how long would you say, let's say if something happened that you would have to like make a response or get the narrative set before you're on playing the defense?
I mean, now the way the way news and information travels, right? How fractured the environment is for where people get their information. I mean, you don't seconds, minutes. You need to be out there almost instantly, because again, like I said, the environment is so fractured with how and where people get their information. You may lose the opportunity to follow up with that person, right? You may not get to them again. So the only thing that they know is whatever that first negative message may be. So it really is speed. And what often happens a lot of times in campaigns, and this goes back to like we're talking about your research. There's the opposition research, which is the research you do on your opponents, and then there's the self research, which is the research you do on yourself. And a part of campaigning and communications planning is, well, what are all of the things in our own background that could create a crisis or vulnerability that our opponents might find? You start getting plans and responses ready for that early in the campaign, just in case you need it. Because the reason for that is because, to your point, if this were to break or happen or come out, we're not going to have time to fumble around and say, well, what do we want to say? You should have done some of that work to begin with. But even though you have the best, apparatuses and research and all those different things, there's still stuff that you miss, right? And like we were just talking about that '08 campaign, okay, one of the big research blunders that happened in that campaign, nobody caught Reverend Wright.
Hmm.
Nobody knew he said all that problematic stuff in that church, and we had looked into everything about Barack Obama's life. We knew about the girlfriends, we knew about the cocaine, we knew about the weed, the fact he was still smoking cigarettes at that time. We knew about all of that stuff, right? But nobody caught the problematic stuff Reverend Wright was saying. And so that became a real time crisis
Yeah. Yeah.
communications moment. And I remember being on the ground helping to deal with that in real time. Like we almost lost that North Carolina primary
Because of that.
because of Reverend Wright. Like it almost toppled his ability to get that nomination.
So, that is communications in a quick 15-minute nutshell, right? Like, and mind you, we're just letting you guys in. There's more to under the hood than you realize.
Hmm.
Um, and so this is football season. Football has kicked off. Um,
I'm excited.
very excited. And
We've
so
never been to a Falcons game. We should fix that. We've
yeah,
been to Hawks game, but we've not done a Falcons game.
let's
And
do
I
it.
I don't do the Dolphins
This is our
games
year,
at all.
baby.
It's
This is
whack.
our year. This is our year.
Yeah.
I think we're going to the Falcons. Me and Ora are supposed to go to the Falcons Dolphins game here, by the way. But
But yeah, I wouldn't do it down here in
so
Florida. No.
so if communications, and I say this is primarily a air attack. Your
Yes.
field game, your ground is more your ground game, your ground and
Mhm.
pound.
Mhm.
And field is where campaigns are won or lost, right?
Mhm.
This is your voter identification, persuasion, and voter turnout operation, right?
Mhm.
And in that structure, you have your field director who is running the overall strategy. They're
Mhm.
deciding which voters to target, how to reach them, and when to contact them.
Mhm.
And in that hierarchy of that department, you of course have your field director. Again, overall strategy, budget management, the hiring of the staff. You have
Mhm.
your organizers. You have a regional and your field organizers, and they're the leads of managing a specific area. Sometimes now even a specific constituency group. So
Mhm.
we want you to focus only on the Asian community, only on the Black community, only on college students. We want you to only focus on issue specific stuff, whether it's environmental issues, whether it's labor rights. You
Mhm.
can you
Mhm.
can break stuff down into that factor.
Mhm.
Then you have a data director who is really important. They're developing the people that you talk to using the voter file. They're working with the targeting. They're looking at the reports. They're compiling all of
Mhm.
that because numbers are very important in this game.
Mhm.
And then of course sometimes there's a field volunteer coordinator, and that is a person
Mhm.
who is looking to get free labor out for people who believe in the candidate or believe what the mission or goal is about.
Mhm. Mhm.
I kind of want to start with understanding what the voter file is and that data director, right? That is really important. It's an important tool. The voter file is basically the database of everyone who's registered to vote in that district or that state or whatever area that you're running in.
Mhm.
Um, and this voter file tells you who has voted in past elections, their party registration, their address, sometimes their age, the
Mhm.
demographics. It helps with the targeting and the outreach.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, some components about this voter file and what we use, mostly Democrats use, is called VAN or Vote Builder.
Mhm. Mhm.
Basic info is in your name, your address, registration, date, and an ID number. And then there's your vote history. What elections have you voted in? Which ones you didn't vote in? It doesn't tell you how you voted, but it says
Mhm.
what election you voted in,
Correct.
right? Then your demographics, that's your age, sometimes your race, sometimes your gender, your income, your income estimate. Doesn't know how much you make.
Mhm.
Your contact information, your phone number, your email address, and then your scores, a modeling score. This lets us know how to build a list of what voters we really want to go after.
Mhm.
Now, I
Mhm.
want people to know this. We get this information based off if you sign up to go to an event, if you sign up to do certain things, they'll match your name, your number to what's already in the voting database. You're registered to vote at a certain address at this location.
Mhm.
And we match that with the name and the information that combines. And this is how we build a track record on who you are. So when
Mhm.
you get polled or when certain stuff comes your way, you get certain mailers, is based off of if you're a diehard voter or not, if you vote in every election, no matter if it's federal, local, municipal, even special elections, runoffs, we're going to target you based on your demographics.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, did I miss anything there?
Um, I think that, it's like you said, there's a real science to it. You have to make some real educated guess, like we were talking about before, like polling, right? Like making sure the science behind that, about making sure that you're asking the right questions and talking to the right people. That's the same that's true for field, right? In your field program and in those lists. And then there's a whole science behind it too, because that's just one data set that you get, but it's incomplete. It likely doesn't tell you everything that you need to know. And so a lot of times we supplement that data. And one of the fascinating things I love to do is overlaying that data with like consumer data. So people, like you said, people buy your data. So we get data all the time. You could sign up for Essence magazine or whatever. All those people sell your data. We purchase it. And we overlay all of that with the voter file, like you said, and that gives us a more of a sense of who you are and how likely we feel like you're going to be to be responsive to our message and what we think that we need to say to you to be able to win the election. And I just think most voters don't understand uh, you know, all that goes into figuring out who to contact and why. Because, there's two from doing, field and canvassing. You'll get volunteers and they'll say, well, we should go to every door. And you're like, no, we're not going to go to every door. We should actually only go. You might go on a street and you might only knock 4 of the houses. And it's
And
like, well, why when we talk to everybody? Because their score that's not a good store,
right,
not a good score. Like you
right.
need to focus on these 4 people for those
And
reasons.
and quite honestly, if we knock on four houses on this street and there's 10 houses, and 4 of those houses, 3 of those houses are fours and they got a yard sign, we've done our job,
Oh
right?
yeah, you're in
We've
good shape.
we've done our job.
You're in good
And
shape.
so the field strategy is usually in 3 steps, right? Field
Mhm.
operations, they have 3 phases. You need
Mhm.
to identify, you need to persuade, and you need to turn out, right?
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
need to voter identification, which is you calling it, knocking on doors, trying to find out who supports you, who's against you, or who's undecided, right?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
And that's usually done, at the beginning of the campaign. You want to get those people in the fold because honestly, if they support you, then you then want to turn them out to vote for you, but you also want to turn them into volunteers, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
If you need to know if who they don't support you, you want to get that as
Mhm.
well, so you
Mhm.
can discourage them from not
Mhm.
voting for your opponent,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
also just know how many are not for you in that area, and if
Mhm.
they're undecided, you want to know why they're undecided, so that you can then use some of the polling and other information you have to then next phase persuade them, which
Mhm.
is focus on your undecideds. Use
Mhm.
multiple contacts, um, multiple ways of different avenues or different channels, direct mail, phone
Mhm.
calls,
Mhm.
digital ads, and possible endorsements, to support or change their mind,
Mhm.
inviting them
Mhm.
out to events,
Mhm. Yeah.
uh, using that data.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then, and that's done as you're about, midway 6 months out, right? You want to start persuading them and get them going. And then, of course, is get out the vote. Everybody you've spoken with, the undecideds, and the people you've identified, you want to make sure you're contacting them, and they know what their plan is to go vote.
Yeah.
If your state has early voting, you want to encourage them to early vote,
Yeah.
for 2 reasons: to get that vote already in the queue and know based off your numbers who you've identified that
Mhm.
they voted for you, but
Mhm.
also to have them use them to turn out and help get other people to go vote.
That's right. Because
Right?
that's one of the most persuasive tools you have is people's
Yep.
friends,
Yep.
and family, and because I know we just coincidentally ended up talking a lot about the Obama campaign, but like the number of caucus people, and I'm gonna tell a couple of stories about your favorite thing, the Iowa caucus, but a couple of things about that. One, man, the amount of supporters that we got, because uh, people would say, I became an Obama supporter because my kid was so excited about him. I wasn't really thinking about him. I wasn't really convinced, but my kid got really involved because of him, kept coming into the office. And so I just kind of kept started paying attention. And then I became an Obama person, but it really started with their kids. So it was that influence right there in the house, that helped got him a supporter, even though the campaign wasn't even necessarily targeting the parents. And then the other thing too, about like that organizing, because it's rare that you get to do real field programs, in the way we got to do it in Iowa and for as long as we did. And man, it would be months where I would talk to somebody. I would have been to their house like 7 times, and they're still undecided. They're undecided. And then all of a sudden down the stretch, you see them, they're not undecided anymore. They're now a supporter. Like that feeling was incredible because you can track all of this in the voter file, like you were saying, right? Every communication, every interaction you have with this person, you're like, I've been talking to this person for 7 months, feeling like I'm getting nowhere. Now they're on board. Now they're volunteering. Like it's one of the best feelings in the world. And similarly, you're like, now I've been knocking on their door for like 9 months. Now, how you ain't never been here? I know y'all in there just seeing me out here not coming to the door. Then all of a sudden, you finally meet Mrs. Johnson. And you're like, I've been trying to find you for 9 months, knocking on this door and calling your house. I just want to talk to you about Barack Obama. It's an incredible feeling. And I just feel like a lot of the way campaigns are being done now, like I just don't know that a lot of these younger organizers are getting the same experience.
They're not.
Yeah.
And I can tell you they're not. And again, campaigns are volunteer driven, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your paid staff manages the volunteers. And
Mm-hmm.
so the way that I used to always build it out, I would have my organizers call and identify people, supporters,
Mm-hmm.
but they needed to turn those supporters into volunteers
Mm-hmm.
because they're the
Mm-hmm.
ones I said, you
Mm-hmm.
organize yourself out of a job.
There you go. That's how you do it.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? If you
Yeah.
want the good things in this job, you need to
Mm-hmm.
organize, you need to get people in here to make your calls,
Mm-hmm.
right? The
Mm-hmm.
more people you get in here, the more calls are banked that you made. The more
Mm-hmm.
people you get in here to knock on doors, the more doors it makes it look like you made, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. And campaigns are volunteer driven, but they're also driven by the numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not in that voter file, it does not exist.
Mm-hmm.
So just
Mm-hmm.
like you talked about Miss Johnson, you went to her house 15 times. It needs to show that you went to her house 15 times
15 times.
and you talked
Mm-hmm.
to her, or she
Mm-hmm.
was not home, or she was,
Mm-hmm.
busy, or
Mm-hmm.
she's still
Mm-hmm.
undecided. Like, you need a track record,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because if then we use that knowledge and those numbers to build out models and ratios, right? And
That's
people
right.
don't really understand that all that goes on it is a science
It
to,
is. It's
to
political
all of this.
science. It is a science to it. And like you were saying about Miss Johnson, everything, man, I would put notes in the system about the conversations. Like her issue is healthcare, and those folks I would go back to the office. I would write them a handwritten note. I would
Mhm.
print out his healthcare policy. I would put it in the envelope and I would mail it to him.
Here you go.
Just building that rapport with folks, and it does really make a difference, right? Like you'd be surprised how many people vote for somebody because they contacted me the most. They asked.
So I think this is a good place to stop. One thing I do want to say, like in voter file, right?
Mm-hmm.
The metrics that we're looking at is the whole voter universe, right? We take that and we use that. Every campaign has a win number. They know
Mm-hmm.
exactly how many votes they need to get them across the line, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you are on a campaign and they don't know the win number and they can't tell you the win number, y'all gonna fucking lose. I'm gonna tell you
Mm-hmm.
that flat
Mm-hmm.
out, right? Um,
It's like going in a restaurant and they don't know the prices.
mm,
So it's just like, wait a minute, but you're a restaurant, you don't know how much you charge. Like that's what not knowing the win number is like
right.
on a campaign.
So, there's the vote universe, how many registered voters in the district. There's target numbers, how many voters you need to win or your win number. Contact rate, how many people that you call and how many people you call or knock on the door and how many people you actually speak to and get a
Mm-hmm.
response, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is when you have a survey question. When you call the question, there's a specific question that you have to call and you need the response.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is, again, a scientific method.
Mm-hmm.
There's persuasion tracking. Are undecided voters moving your way, right? We
Mm-hmm.
had 200 undecided voters. Now we have 150. And
Mm-hmm.
we got those 50 voters in the last 3 weeks. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you did what's that rate of you turning over that many voters,
Mhm,
right?
mhm, mhm,
And then your turnout projections. Will your supporters actually vote, right?
mhm,
And that's based off their history. Yeah, they
mhm,
say they're gonna vote, but looking at the record, they are spotty at voting. So
mhm,
not quite sure. You need to go
mhm,
back and you need to talk to them over and over and
and
over.
over and over and over again. That's right.
Um, I think I want to put a pin in it there. Of course, this is a series. And we're going to come back to talking about it, how the money connection and where your budget goes for all of this, right? Like
Mhm,
breaking
mhm.
it down. And I think there is another aspect of making a dollar count. Um, and even the GOTV operation, the get out the vote operation, right?
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna say GLTV is definitely one we'll dive into, and I think the last thing I'll say about communication, which we probably would talk more about too, is that why is it so expensive, right? It's not your consultants necessarily charging all this money. Because remember, we were talking to Christian, and Christian was like, "I didn't think I could afford y'all." It's not so much what we charge and what we make, right? So take like your TV ads, right? Like I can make you a great ad, but like I have no control over what the stations are going to charge to run it. That's why you have to raise so much money. Postage for mail, paper, right, to print the mail in these print houses, all of that stuff, these tariffs, inflation, all that other stuff, it's making direct mail more expensive. And so, you give those estimates to your clients and they're like, y'all charge too much. I'm like, I don't control the price of postage.
Right.
It's not me charging you anything. This is just what it costs to mail something.
A stamp is what? What is it now? 40 something cents?
And I want to say 45, right?
Right.
Which is crazy. So, just text it. You ain't getting no letters.
Right. So again, this is your free game episode, right? Free game here.
Mm-hmm.
Communications and field, they aren't separate departments. They have to work together, right?
Yes.
Your field team is gathering voter feedback that should inform your communication strategy, right? Your communication team is creating the materials that your field team needs to go out and speak to voters, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the things I want you guys to take away from this episode is message first, right? Develop a clear, concise message before you hire anyone, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Know what you're going to talk about and make sure you hire the right people, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's a data-driven operation, right? Your voter file, the polling, all that is based on data.
Mm-hmm.
Making sure you're integrating everything, right? Your communications department, your field department, your finance department, the digital people, everybody is working together cohesively and,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure everything is consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Invest early, people. It is important to start building your operation and building out. Don't, I work with candidates who decide to run 3 or 4 months out, and that's not enough time. You got to raise the money. Again, Dean of the Georgia legislator, Calvin Smyre, it takes coal to run a train. It takes gold to run a campaign. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
get your message out there if you don't have any money.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and one thing I always tell my organizers, it's a carpenter's mentality. You measure twice, you cut once, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
measure everything.
Mm-hmm.
Track whether you're spending too much money on your voters, on messaging, on ads. You want to make sure that you're spending your donors' money correctly,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether you're
Mm-hmm.
running for city council, governor, dog catcher, the fundamentals don't change.
Mm-mm.
They
Mm-mm.
don't.
The numbers just get bigger, but the rules are the same.
Right. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So this is our episode for today. I don't, do we have a Mamba moment? Anybody
Look,
deserve it?
man, look, I would just say anybody that gets in the arena, right, that gets out there and does is running for office is hard. And what we've been covering is just the barely the surface of all that goes into scaling and running these campaigns, both as a staffer and as a candidate. But we need people to do it.
Yeah.
We need
Yeah.
people to show up. So I would give my Mamba moment to all of the people that are just showing up and putting their hat in the ring.
Agreed. I second that. But I have a special Mamba moment for our Papa, Big Papa Stu Cornelius, who's just making sure we right, we tight.
He'll be
He's
on the show soon too.
so he keeps his head on a swivel, and I really appreciate the brother. He's dedicated. And I wish I would have known Stu while in college, but we got many years to look ahead. So
That's right.
appreciate you, my brother. Appreciate you. Appreciate you.
All right.
All right, Kev. I'll see you, man. I think we're gonna be in DC together. So
We are gonna be in DC together. We're gonna do some episodes from DC and introduce some more of the incredible folks that we've gotten to work with across the country.
you see this finger? Terrence Woodbury calling you out, bro.
Travis Tazalar
Travis, listen, that's gonna be funny.
and Sydney Snow. We gotta get Sydney on here.
Travis Taslar is the first what's that white boy? What's that white boy actor?
I call him Tom Cruise.
Oh no, I'm talking about Magic Mike.
I think that's more Jake.
Channing Tatum. Channing Tatum.
He,
Travis
he,
Taslar is the
yeah,
first Channing Tatum.
yeah, yeah. That's also true.
Yo, I'm looking forward to it. We're back in
Yep.
DC. Yeah. All right, y'all. Peace. Appreciate
Peace.
you.